Hello and welcome back to another popcorn chat. I should have put my phone on silent. Unknown caller. Hello?
What's your favourite scary movie?
I think I'd have to say Candyman. The original, not the one that came out last year, but the original. I just think it has a lot more to say about it and real sort of commentary on sort of the gentrification of the area. And, hello? Hello? Oh, I hung up. Hello and welcome back to Popcorn Chat. My name is Sarah if you don't know who I am. And this is my first video of 2022. How exciting! A brand new video with a brand new review of an exciting new film, which is Scream 5 or Scream 2022. Whatever you choose to call it, I'm going to keep referring it to Scream 5. It just seems to make sense to me. So after 11 years since Scream 4, we're back with another instalment within the franchise, and we return with some old characters as well as some new characters as we head back to Woodsboro. This being the first Scream film that wasn't directed by Wes Craven due to his passing in 2015. So does it hold up? Let's get into the video. Before we move on, I thought I'd let you know that there are going to be spoilers ahead, so if you've not seen the film, probably come back to this film after you've watched it, because I'm going to talk about a few plot points in this. So let's talk about some positives of Scream 5. So with any Scream film, we have the iconic opening, and this film, it's okay, but I really like what Tara does in this moment when she's asked what her favourite scary movie is, and she references a lot of modern horrors that, you know, have come along since the previous film. She mentions the likes of The Babadook, It Follows, and many other great modern horror films. I really like that element, and I think that's exactly what Wes Craven would have done, you know, looking at the progression of time and stuff and how horror's changed. So I really liked that element and how they acknowledged the change in horror. You don't see many 18 rated films anymore, however I think the gore and the kills in this film were excellent. I think it was a really good sort of hybrid of both practical effects and sort of using a bit more CGI. I think that really added to sort of elements that they weren't able to do in the previous films and really sort of made you feel a bit, oh, that's a bit gross. So I thought the kills were superb. As I said, they brought a lot of old characters back, and I think they were quite brave in what they did with some of those characters. Going into this film, when you see the sort of the trio coming back into this franchise, I thought one of them's going to get it. I wasn't sure who was going to die, but, you know, unfortunately it was Dewey, and I knew it was going to happen as soon as he said that exchange in the lift between Tara as well and Sam, and I thought that's it. I knew he was going to be a goner. And I would like to have seen if that was the same case, if Wes was here still to do that, if he would have killed any of the original characters off. Because Dewey's always been one of these characters that's always had a sort of, like, he would have died realistically. Out of everyone, I guess it makes sense the most. I think they were pretty brave in doing that, and I think a lot of Scream fans will be quite shocked by that act, but I thought it was quite brave and I liked it. I thought the new characters were quite interesting. I quite like the dynamic of the group. They're a little bit more attainable than the sort of the younger characters in Scream 4, for example. I really liked a handful of that sort of friendship group. I liked Wes, you know, sort of a note little there to Wes Craven himself by naming that character Wes. I liked Mindy, who was one of the twins, and she was Randy's niece, I think it was. So there was kind of a reference there again to the original characters. I really liked her. And I also liked Sam. I think Sam obviously was sort of the protagonist in this film. And I think her sort of storyline and sort of coming to terms with who she is and her identity, I really liked. And I thought, yeah, those three characters for me were sort of standouts. Like many Scream films, it had those sort of red herring moments leading you down trails of who you think might be the killer or killers, and, you know, be it from a glance or certain actions or, you know, why have you got that mark on your arm, which is a classic trope of the sort of franchise, and I love how the directors sort of continued that within this. One of my favourite scenes in this film revolves around Judy Hicks and her son Wes, when she's ordered food and waiting for her son to come back. And then they have the exchange where he's like, okay, I'm going to go in the shower, and she's off to go and get the food. And I loved that sort of the intensity of that moment. I loved the camera movements and sort of subverting where those sort of traditional jump scares would be. They sort of, you know, counteracted that and sort of had you on your edge for a little bit longer, waiting for Ghostface to appear. So I really thought that moment was shot well. There's kind of some logistics that might not have been realistic, like where were the police when she rang? I think she'd been on the lawn for quite a long time. But again, just like Dewey, I think that's a very bold thing to do, killing off Judy. I did not expect that. I knew she was coming back as a character, but I did not expect her to have that fate. Just a little note on that scene as well. I liked how it was Wes in the shower as opposed to a woman, which we've seen previously in the Scream franchise or any other sort of horror film. You know, that's the sort of typical trope, but instead they had a man be in the shower, and I thought that was quite interesting, and they mimicked the shot that we've seen from the Stab films within the Scream films again and again. So I thought that was quite a little, another subversion of your expectations of this film. By no means is this film perfect. It has some of its flaws, so let's talk about a few of the negatives. There was only one part in the film where I thought that the pacing dropped a little bit. There was one moment where I actually looked at my watch and I thought, okay, well, I've got 50 minutes left of the film, and that was sort of round, about the halfway mark, and I was thinking, where's Sydney? We've seen her quite early into the film, we see her answer the phone, but where is she? When is she coming into town? And just before that is when I felt that the pacing kind of dipped a little bit, but then it picked back up, so it was only for like a 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so, but then it did pick back up, to be fair. As an overarching thing, I generally did miss Wes Craven's sort of campiness that he brought to these films. I feel like the directors brought their own edge, and it was maybe a little bit too serious at parts. You had those sort of quips that certain characters would say, but they didn't really get laugh out loud responses that I imagine, especially 1 to 3 might have got in the cinema at the time. Maybe it's just a different kind of, mood that they were going for, but I did miss some of that more comedic elements that Craven was so good at bringing to the screen. I don't think the original characters were used enough. They have those really short moments. It's a lot more about the new characters. I think Judy Hicks probably has the most to do in terms of relation to the news story, and fits in really well with how the town's running. She is brought back with a purpose, I felt. But the other 3, I think, was just a sort of, here's the characters that you love from the other 4 films. I don't think they were used to their best ability. It was just kind of a cameo, in my opinion. In all honesty, hand on heart, I did guess one of the killers quite early. I thought I knew who it was going to be quite early on, and then they obviously played onto that sort of trope with Jack Quaid's character. Later on in the film, they're like, Dewey even says, don't trust the boyfriend. There's other elements where he's like doubting it, and he's like, I've never seen these films before. And you're like, well, that's too obvious. It can't be that person. And they do end up revealing that it is that character. So I don't know. I think they could have been a little bit more clever with that element. And when the killers do reveal themselves, I feel like, I don't know if it's the characters or the actors themselves, but I felt like they were mimicking, other sort of serial killers or villains that we've seen on, TV or film, and I don't think they brought an original performance. But then again, you could argue that these characters loved the films, they loved cinema, and they might be deliberately mimicking, killers we've seen on the silver screen before, possibly, but maybe I'm giving them too much credit. I just think it felt, I was like, could have brought something more original. I'm just being really nitpicky here on the negatives, really nitpicky. I would have liked to have seen something more original from the killers in the reveal and their actual performance. One of the most interesting elements of this film for me was Sam's story. We get revealed fairly early on that she is Billy Loomis's son, and I thought that was a really interesting dynamic. What was starting to make it different to the rest of the Scream films, this person's actually willing to change. Yes, they may have serial killer blood that she keeps referring to in her system. She is willing to change that, and that's obviously not what a lot of the other films do previously. I would have liked to have seen a lot more about Sam's story. I think they could have played onto that a little bit more. Maybe they couldn't get Skeet in it for much, but I would have liked to see more hallucinations or played on that element a lot more. And we only really saw it near the beginning. Didn't think they fully committed with that. I thought it was the strongest sort of plot point in it, so I'd like to have seen more from Sam's character. As I said, I'm being very, very picky there with the negatives, as I generally really enjoyed this film. I think any sort of Scream fan will enjoy this and think it's a great addition to the franchise. So where does Scream 2022 sit amongst the rest of the films? So for me, I would say Scream 3 is last, then it goes Scream 4, Scream 5, or Scream 2022 in third, second would be Scream 2, and then Scream 1 is the best one in my opinion. So it's in at number 3 out of the 5 films. I would say it's third position, within my ranking. This film was a great time. It wasn't perfect, but I really enjoyed it and it sits well within the Scream franchise, so I'm going to give it 3.5 stars out of 5. Overall, I really loved this film. I think it was a great romp, added a lot to the characters, with some creative elements in there, and I think many Scream fans will enjoy this. From elements that I think could have been improved, can't really help a lot of that, because I think Wes Craven brought a lot of that sort of direction, campiness, some extra sort of comedic satire, and I don't think that was there, but I don't think we can sort of render that really. As for the sort of characters, yeah, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more originality in the script writing, more character progression for Sam especially, but generally it was still a good time. So if you loved it, you hated it, let me know down below in the comments and I'd love to check out your opinions. I'll be back very soon for another Popcorn Chat.